The cold, sterile air of the restaurant clung to my skin, the hum of indistinct chatter buzzing in my ears like flies. I sat across from Emily, my wife of 5 years. Her fingers drummed lightly on the tablecloth, her eyes drifting to the clock behind me every few minutes. She was restless. Nervous. I knew why. It had been 3 months since this all began, this strange, twisted dynamic we'd fallen into. At first, it seemed like a game, an experiment to reignite the fading embers of our marriage. But now, sitting in this upscale restaurant waiting for him, I wasn't sure if I'd made a mistake. Her lips pressed into a tight line as she caught me staring. "You okay, babe?" she asked, her voice soft but carrying a hint of the guilt she tried to hide. I forced a smile, trying to push back the knot in my chest. "Yeah, I'm fine." I wasn't fine. Everything about this felt wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. Emily had been clear from the start, this was something she needed. She didn't love me any less, she'd said. This was just an extension of us. A way to explore. But as I sat there, waiting for Marcus to arrive, the man who had become my wife's lover, my stomach churned with a sickening mix of anger, shame, and something darker. Something I didn't want to acknowledge. It wasn't the first time we'd met like this, the three of us. It had become a pattern over the past few months. Dinner, drinks, small talk, and then, well, I'd sit in the living room or go out for a walk while they disappeared into our bedroom. The cuckold arrangement. That's what they called it, right? It was supposed to be consensual. It was supposed to be what we both wanted. But the more it happened, the less control I felt, like I was watching my life play out from the sidelines, powerless to stop it. I shifted in my seat, my fingers twitching against the edge of the table. Emily glanced at the clock again. Marcus was late. He was never late. Just as I was about to suggest we leave, the restaurant door swung open. Marcus strode in like he owned the place, his broad shoulders cutting through the crowd with ease. He was tall, athletic, with dark hair and that confident swagger that made him instantly magnetic. I hated him. Emily's face lit up when she saw him, the kind of smile she used to give me. My heart sank a little further into my chest. She stood, brushing a hand through her hair, and Marcus wrapped his arms around her, kissing her cheek in that casual, possessive way. I stayed seated, watching the scene unfold like an outsider, even though it was my life, my wife, my table. "Sorry I'm late," Marcus said, his voice smooth, almost too smooth. He didn't apologize to me. He barely acknowledged me as he slid into the seat beside Emily, his arm draped casually around her shoulders. The knot in my stomach twisted tighter. "It's fine," Emily said, laughing softly. She was more at ease now, her earlier tension melting away in his presence. I cleared my throat, forcing myself to speak. "So, what's the plan for tonight?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, finally turning his attention to me. "Same as always, I guess." He grinned, and something about it felt predatory. "Unless you're thinking of changing things up?" The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded. Emily looked between the two of us, her smile faltering slightly. "No," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. "No, I'm good." But I wasn't good. I wasn't good at all. Dinner passed in a blur of meaningless conversation. I barely tasted the food, my mind too occupied with the tightening coil of dread in my chest. Emily and Marcus laughed, joked, shared glances that were too intimate for my liking. I felt like a ghost, sitting at the table but not really there. Not really part of anything. By the time we finished eating, it was dark outside. The drive home was quiet, the silence punctuated only by the occasional hum of the car engine. Emily sat in the passenger seat, her hand resting on my thigh, a gesture of comfort or maybe reassurance. But it felt hollow. Empty. When we pulled into the driveway, Marcus followed us inside, like he always did. The routine was familiar now, too familiar. Emily poured drinks, Marcus made himself comfortable on the couch, and I pretended like this was normal. Like this was okay. But tonight was different. Something was off. I could feel it in the air, a tension that hadn't been there before. Emily seemed oblivious, chatting with Marcus as though everything was perfectly fine. But I saw the way he watched her, the way his eyes lingered a little too long, the way his smile curved just a bit too sharply. "Are you coming?" Emily's voice broke through my thoughts. She was standing by the door to the bedroom, looking at me expectantly. I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest. Normally, I would leave them alone. Normally, I would go for a walk or sit in the living room, trying to ignore the sounds coming from the other side of the wall. But tonight, something was wrong. "I'll stay out here," I said, forcing a smile. "You two enjoy yourselves." Emily gave me a strange look, but nodded. Marcus just smirked. They disappeared into the bedroom, the door clicking shut behind them. I stood in the living room, the silence pressing down on me like a weight. I could feel the tension building, like a storm about to break. My hands trembled slightly as I poured myself another drink. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The sounds from the bedroom were muted, but I could still hear them. The soft murmur of voices, the occasional laugh, the creak of the bed. It was all so familiar, but tonight, it felt like a dagger twisting in my gut. And then, the sound stopped. I frowned, my heart skipping a beat. The sudden silence was unnerving, like the calm before a hurricane. I set my drink down, my palms sweating. Something wasn't right. I walked to the bedroom door, my footsteps slow and deliberate. My hand hovered over the doorknob for a moment before I turned it, pushing the door open. What I saw on the other side made my blood run cold. Emily was lying on the bed, her body motionless, her eyes wide and unseeing. Blood stained the sheets, a dark, sickening pool spreading beneath her. Her throat had been slashed, the wound jagged and deep. Marcus stood over her, a bloody knife in his hand, his expression calm. Too calm. "What the hell?" My voice caught in my throat, the words choking me. Marcus turned to me, his eyes cold and empty. "She was never yours," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You were just a bystander. A spectator." My heart pounded in my chest, adrenaline surging through my veins. I took a step back, but Marcus moved faster, crossing the room in an instant. He grabbed me by the collar, slamming me against the wall. The knife was inches from my throat. "You wanted this," he hissed, his breath hot against my ear. "You let this happen." I struggled, trying to push him away, but he was stronger than I expected. Panic surged through me, my mind racing. How had it come to this? How had I let things get so out of control? I didn't want this, I gasped, my voice shaking. Marcus's grip tightened, his eyes boring into mine. Liar. The blade pressed against my skin, and I braced myself for the worst. But then, something changed. Marcus hesitated, his grip loosening just slightly. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. I seized the opportunity, shoving him with all my strength. He stumbled back, the knife slipping from his hand. I didn't think, I just ran, my heart pounding in my chest as I bolted for the front door. Behind me, I heard Marcus's footsteps, heavy and fast. He was right on my heels, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I burst through the front door, the cold night air hitting me like a slap in the face. My car was parked in the driveway, the keys still in my pocket. I fumbled with them, my hands shaking as I tried to unlock the door. Marcus was almost on me. I could hear his footsteps, feel his presence closing in. Finally, the door unlocked. I threw myself inside, slamming the door shut just as Marcus reached the car. His face twisted in rage, his fists pounding against the window. I started the engine, my hands trembling as I threw the car into reverse. The tires screeched as I backed out of the driveway, my heart racing. As I sped down the dark, empty street, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Marcus stood in the middle of the road, watching me, his face illuminated by the car's taillights. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. The game was over.